The Boston Celtics take game 2 in the NBA Finals 105-98 to go up 2-0 in the series. So, Trevon, what are your thoughts on game 2?
I think that this game was pretty much expected, a more close game. Once people get that game one out of the way, they filled each other out and kind of understand the other team's game plan. I think we saw a lot more poise from the Dallas Mavericks coming into this game too. On the Boston Celtics side, the three ball was not falling as much as it was in that first game. I believe it took them until the second quarter to hit their first three in the game. We know that they did a lot of drive and kicking, just producing more spot up opportunities for all of their players. I believe in game one, the Celtics produced around 32 spot up opportunities or 35, and the Mavericks were at like 15. So that kind of just shows you there about the offensive flow from that standpoint, just the type of shots that were being generated from each team. The Celtics were simply just getting better opportunities to shoot, particularly from beyond the 3-point line. And the Mavericks just weren't producing that. It was a lot of Luka going at mismatches, and he succeeded scoring 30, but they just weren't able to get the win. And I feel like this game, the Celtics were just not able to hit that three ball as well or to capitalize on those spot up opportunities. While they were still getting some similar shots, they just weren't able to knock them down. And that allowed the Dallas Mavericks to stay and hang around closer. And you saw just Luka continue to do what he does as being the offensive force, and a lot of the other guys surrounding him were picking up their end of the bargain as well and being able to produce on the offensive end. Kyrie still hasn't had the game that you would expect him to have as far as the scoring standpoint. So, he's due for a big game. And as the series continues to move on, we expect for the rest of those guys, including Kyrie, to probably click offensively as a team and be able to score better. But it's just a tale of two different sides where Boston, we talk about the aggregate ball handling around the whole roster. There's just a lot of guys that are able to initiate an offense and be the guy to try to break down the defense. And everybody that they pass to is capable of knocking down a perimeter shot. We know that they love to take threes, and they were one of the top teams in the league as far as succeeding from beyond the arc. So a lot of their offense is going to go with that three ball, whether it's falling or not. But even then, they still have just the athletic size across the board for guys that can still find a way to get a bucket. I feel like they're best when they put their head down and get to the basket, specifically talking about Tatum and Brown. But then you think about what Drew Holiday did tonight. You still have Derek White. Kristaps Porzingis provides you a lot of mismatches offensively, and Horford is going to fill in the spots where he needs to. And then even Hauser and Peyton Pritchard and Cornette, those are guys that can shoot from the perimeter, whereas Dallas is more of a 4-out offense, and it's a lot harder to produce those threes, especially when some of those guys spotting up are not necessarily three-point shooters. So it's just the tale of where the Celtics have a lot more firepower across the board. And I think that there's not really a matchup you can go at. Like the Mavericks had Luka get Tatum on the switch a lot. And that's not really a matchup that you're really looking for. I think they were really trying to get Jaylen Brown off of him. Kyrie is being occupied by Drew Holiday. So it's just not a lot of mismatches that you can go at. And that's what Luka really excels at, is getting you to switch guys onto him that you don't want him to. And then usually when he gets that switch, he's either bigger than the guy, is able to make the big step out and have to guard him and move his feet. And there's just not many of those type of matchups for him. So you're seeing that offense kind of struggle right now and just not having that ability to drive and kick for perimeter shots. So I think it's really a tell of the offense. I don't think defensively the Mavericks have answers for Boston. I think they're really just going to have to figure out their offense, and it's a tough thing to figure out.
Yeah, you had a lot of really good points there. And I still think the Dallas Mavericks can get at least one game in this series. I think that they can figure something out. But I think we all recognize that the Boston Celtics, they just have a lot of advantages in this matchup. And I think that that is a really good example of why matchups are so important in the NBA, especially once you get to the playoffs. And we talked about the importance of matchups in our previous videos, especially when we were talking about the Dallas Mavericks and the teams that they played to get to the finals, right? We especially when they played the Minnesota Timberwolves and how they were able to load up on Anthony Edwards and force other people to beat them, right? Well, in this matchup with the Celtics, it's just completely different here. And the Boston Celtics are uniquely equipped to counteract what the Dallas Mavericks like to do on the offensive side and the defensive side. When we look on the offensive side for the Mavericks, what do they like to do most? And what are they most effective at? They like to give Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic the ball and let them run pick and roll with the big, right? Lively or Gafford, roll into the basket, and they get Luka or Kyrie downhill, and they're able to take advantage of the situation and manipulate everything in terms of if the big helps, they throw the lob to Lively or Gafford, who are great screen and roll players that are great finishers at the basket. And if the big doesn't help, they have the shot. And if the big helps and they help on the back end on the roll, they just throw it to the opposite corner and they play off of that, right? Well, here in this matchup with the Boston Celtics, and I think that this is a great example of the versatility that the Boston Celtics have, especially on the defensive end. They put Tatum on the big. And what does that do? It prevents Luka and Kyrie from getting downhill because they're just going to switch it. And that nullifies them getting downhill, putting pressure on the defense to make decisions. They can't just throw the lob as easily. And it makes the shots tougher for the Dallas Mavericks, right? And then you say, okay, well, why don't they just hunt the Boston Celtics big man? Well, the problem is they're guarding a guy like PJ Washington or Derrick Jones Jr. And when they come off of the screen, they are not the same lob threat that a Lively or a Gafford are. And when they pop, they're best when they're able to shoot in rhythm, catch and shoot shots in the corner, but they're not as good shooting above the break, right, of the 3-point line. So really what the Boston Celtics are doing, they are forcing Dallas to have to do things that they are not accustomed to doing or they haven't been accustomed to doing in the previous rounds. Dallas has been able to get super easy shots on a consistent basis in their previous matchups. But right now, the Boston Celtics are just making it tough on the Dallas Mavericks. And you can see it because Luka and Kyrie are having to play one-on-one now. And so what does that do? They have to take tough shots. They have to be great in order for the Dallas Mavericks to even have a chance. And it also prevents the role players from getting in a rhythm, right? Getting the shots that they're accustomed to, getting shots that are a lot easier because you're so focused on Kyrie and Luka. So the game plan of the Boston Celtics is working very well at the moment. And if you look at the Boston Celtics on the offensive end, they do such a great job of spacing the floor and driving and kicking, right? And the Dallas Mavericks, they like to load up on the opposing team, especially the opposing team's best player. We saw it a lot in the matchup with the Minnesota Timberwolves. They loaded up on Anthony Edwards, forced him into the rim protectors that the Dallas Mavericks have because they're not so worried about a guy like Rudy Gobert. They usually help off of him because he's not as good as of a finisher and he's not going to shoot 3-point shots. Well, you can't do that with the Boston Celtics. Like I said, they do such a great job of spacing the floor. All of their players on the roster shoot really well from the 3-point line. So it just makes it tougher for everyone on the Dallas Mavericks to have to help and recover from such a large distance. And the Boston Celtics, like I said, they do such a great job of driving and kicking. And once they get that ball moving, they just find really good shots. And that's what you were talking about with they just get really good shots on a consistent basis. And honestly, if the Boston Celtics knock down their shots and they don't make silly turnovers and they play smart, it's going to be tough for the Dallas Mavericks. The Boston Celtics did not shoot well tonight, but they were still able to come out with the victory. They really won the game on the defensive end and free throws. They shot really well from the free throw line and they had a great night on the defensive end. So It's just going to be tough for the Dallas Mavericks. I still think that they can get a game, especially when they go back home, or maybe even two. But I think we all have to just acknowledge that the Boston Celtics just have a lot of advantages in this matchup, and matchups are that important when you're in the NBA, especially once you get to the playoffs.